Hello everyone, Teo here. Today I'm reviewing the Parblo Coast 12 Pro Gen 2 pen display. First of all, disclaimer, this is a review unit provided by the company, and in this video I'll just present to you my findings so that you can decide whether this is worth the money. And the price of this 11.6-inch pen display is US $249 on Parblo's website, and on Amazon USA right now they have a $30 coupon, so you can get it at a lower price on amazon.com. In case you don't know what a pen display is, it's actually a monitor, even though it looks kind of thin. And because it's a monitor, you will have to connect this to a computer in order to use this, in order to draw on this. Now, I'm going to give you the bottom line up front. There are some potential deal breakers. The first one is there is no switch display functionality, which is why my laptop display is black, because I'm using this pen display as the main display. Switch display allows you to move the cursor from one display to the other and back with shortcuts. So you can use the shortcuts here or use the pen buttons here, but this pen display's driver does not support that shortcut. So if you want to move your cursor from one display to the other, it's going to be very inconvenient, which is why I'm just using this as the main display. So if you are someone who needs to use a dual display setup, that is a potential deal breaker. Second potential deal breaker is if you use Clip Studio Paint on Windows and you click on the menu. For me, the menu does not appear. The menu appears for a split second and it disappears. So I'm not sure if this is a problem with this version of Clip Studio Paint or with the Windows driver that I am using, but this pretty much makes CSP unusable. The third potential deal breaker is there may be cursor misalignment. I said maybe because when I first tested the pen display, the cursor misalignment was quite obvious, as in the cursor was quite far away from the pen tip even after calibration. But right now it works fine, which is great. But on Mac OS, there is still noticeable cursor misalignment. For Windows now it's working fine. And if you use the pen near the edge of the display, you will see cursor misalignment. So how I test for cursor misalignment is I would draw separate lines like this, and I would join the lines to see if I can join the lines without gaps and without the lines overshooting, and it looks fine here. Let me show you cursor misalignment. So right now the pen tip is in contact with the display, and you can see the cursor is directly beneath the pen tip. But as I move the pen tip close to the edge of the display, the cursor will stray away. So when you're using the pen at the edge of the display, you will have to look at where the cursor is instead of where the pen tip is. So this is a minor inconvenience, but it's not a major deal breaker, because as long as you're drawing away from the edge of the display, the cursor is quite accurate. As I move the pen to the bottom edge, there is also cursor misalignment depending on how you hold the pen. So right now the pen is pointed down, so the cursor is beneath the pen tip. But when I hold the pen like this, which is how I usually hold the pen, the cursor is quite far away from the pen tip. Yeah, can you see where the cursor is? It's quite far. So if you try to click on some of the icons here very quickly, there is a good chance you may misclick the icons, and that happens quite often for me. So when I use the pen tip near the bottom, I have to see where the cursor is. If you look at this line drawing that I have here, you can see that diagonal line wobble or jitter is not an issue. So for this quick sketch, I was drawing with my normal speed, and the diagonal lines, they are quite straight. They are pretty straight. And this is the zoom out view, so I didn't really have any issues while drawing with this. Another issue I discovered is this pen supports tilt sensitivity, but tilt sensitivity doesn't work consistently with this app concepts, which happens to be one of my main drawing apps. Okay, now it works. I find that when I tilt the pen, tilt would only work after a second or 2-second delay. Yeah, so now it works. Yep, there is definitely a delay of 1 or 2 seconds before the tilt brush works. By the way, this pen display does not support touch because this is not a touch screen. Let's try again. Tilt. Yep, there is a 1 or 2 second delay. This is tilt sensitivity with Sketchbook Pro. So this is thin line. I'm pressing really hard now. So this is with pressure. And now I can tilt the brush, thin, broad, thin, broad. So tilt works fine with Sketchbook Pro. Tilt works fine with Photoshop. The cursor is able to follow the direction of the pen, so I can get broad vertical strokes or thin vertical strokes, broad horizontal strokes, thin horizontal strokes, broad horizontal strokes. Let's test pressure sensitivity. This app that I'm using is Medibank Paint Pro, and yes, this pen display can be used for writing, but there is some latency. So as I draw this long sweeping line, I can see the cursor trying to catch up with the pen tip. But this is not too bad because when I'm drawing, I'm not drawing this fast. Okay, let's look at the initial activation force. This is how thick the line really is. So let's draw a thin line. I can see diagonal line wobble. Now this pen is quite sensitive. I can draw thin lines quite easily, but I have actually tweaked the pressure curve to help me draw this. Next, let's look at the line transition from thin to thick. So as I draw this diagonal line, you can see there is diagonal line wobble as well. Okay, so this is pretty good. I can get thin, thick, thin, thick. Let's look at the pressure consistency. I'm trying to maintain consistent pressure. Again, I can see the diagonal line wobble. Yeah, and it's quite obvious here. Let's draw some dots. Looks fine. Let's have some tapered strokes. Lines are able to taper smoothly and sharply, and this is a good taper because it starts thin, becomes thick, and becomes thin again. So this is good. You can use this for cross hatching or hatching if you want to. And lastly, we need to test for cursor misalignment. Let's draw separate lines and try to join the lines to see if there will be gaps or if the lines will overshoot. Okay, no issues. Let's draw some hatching lines. This is good. I can see line variation, as in I can see the lines are, I can see thin here, thick here, thin, thin, thick, thin, thick. So there is line variation, which is going to make your drawing look more interesting. And now let's talk about drawing experience. So this display size is 11.6 inch, and to me this is considered small compared to bigger pen displays. Generally speaking, I would recommend you get something that is larger, something that is at least 13 inches. But of course, larger pen displays will be more expensive. So on a smaller pen display, everything will look smaller. The canvas area for drawing will be smaller after you account for the palettes on the left and right. But this is still usable. The resolution of 1080p is alright on this 11.6-inch display. There is pixelation, but it's alright. This is just a random sketch that I drew to test the pen display. And I have used only one brush size for this sketch. Because the pen is so sensitive, I can draw thin and thick lines just based on pressure. So I don't need to adjust the brush size manually. So if I want thin lines, for example, I can just, well, draw with minimal pressure. If I want thick lines, just draw with lots of pressure. And the lines are able to come out just the way I expect them to. But on Mac OS, there is noticeable cursor misalignment. So I probably wouldn't recommend this pen display for Mac users. But for Windows, it looks fine. Let me use the eyedropper to add some texture on this tree. Maybe add some more lights here. Add some people here, some lights. Add some words here. Yeah, looks fine. The drawing experience is quite smooth. Let's color this. I am not very particular about coloring within the shapes because I'm just drawing for fun. This drawing surface is matte textured, and this is a matte textured screen protector. It's not matte glass. So the matte screen protector does affect image quality, as in I can see some color noise or grain that affects the image quality. But it's not that bad. I mean, if you look for it, you can see it, but it's not too bad. It does provide a nice tactile drawing experience. The main issue that I have here with drawing is I like to use a dual display setup, so I usually have another display that shows the reference photo, but because there is no switch display feature with the driver, I can't do that with this pen display. Oops. This pen display may be small, but there is still space for me to rest my palm on the side, and there is still a good amount of canvas space to work with. Of course, you can always hide the palettes to get larger drawing area. The 16:9 aspect ratio is alright, although I would prefer 16:10 aspect ratio, but pen displays with 16:10 aspect ratios are kind of rare. So that's the drawing experience, which is quite positive. So even though there is diagonal line wobble while I was testing the pen, but when it comes to drawing, I didn't really notice the diagonal line wobble or jitter, thankfully. So it's just a cursor misalignment at the edges that is a minor inconvenience or annoyance. The pen performance is pretty good, except for some of the issues that I mentioned earlier with concepts and also with Clip Studio Paint. And now let's take a look at the items included with the purchase. This is how the packaging box looks. So in the box, you will get these items in addition to the pen display. This is the quick start guide, warranty info. The pen display comes with 1 year of warranty, a microfiber cleaning cloth, one artist glove, a mini HDMI to full-size HDMI cable, a USB-A to USB-C L-shaped power cable, a USB-C to USB-C braided video cable, 8 replacement plastic pen nibs and a nib remover. And lastly, there is the pen and the pen case, which is likely made with PU leather. So this is the Parblo S01 pen. The pen has two side buttons with firm clicks. The silicone grip is big and comfortable. This is the plastic pen tip. It is firm and doesn't have any movement when in contact with the drawing surface. The pen is powered by battery, so no charging is required. Now this end cap here can be removed. This is not an eraser, this is actually a cap. And you can see 3 holes here. So you can actually put 3 replacement pen tips here so that there will always be replacement pen tips with the pen. This is quite convenient. And this ring here, this shiny ring, can be removed and you can use this as a nib or pen tip remover. So that is a pretty smart design. When you first see the pen display, you will also see a big sticker with instructions on how you can connect the pen display to your computer. Now when you peel off the protective film for the screen protector, make sure you do not peel off the screen protector. The display is supposed to be matte textured, not glossy. Design of this pen display looks simple and functional. This is the same design as the previous model. The corners are rounded off, the body is matte textured. The display has a matte screen protector with anti-glare. There are 6 hotkeys with firm clicks and this dial with a button in the middle so that you can switch between the different functionality. And all these controls are customizable. The back is matte textured. I'm not sure if this is plastic or metal. It feels like metal. There are 2 long pieces of rubber feet with good grip on the table. Now the overall build quality for this product is solid. And here by the left side there are some labels for the brightness control buttons, the power button and the ports. For the ports, there is USB-C video, mini HDMI, and this USB-C is for power, and that's the power light indicator. The weight of this is 910 grams, and due to how thin this is, many people will confuse this with a tablet. Now, a pen display is not a tablet because this does not come with an OS and there is no built-in battery. You have to connect this to a computer in order to draw on this. There are 2 ways to connect the pen display to your computer. If your computer's USB-C port can output video, you can use the included USB-C to USB-C cable for a single cable connection. Now, if you are using a laptop, the laptop will power the pen display and the battery for the laptop will drain much faster, so it's best to connect the laptop to power. If your computer does not have a USB-C video port, it needs to have a HDMI port, and this laptop has a full-size HDMI port, so let's use that for HDMI video connection. This is mini HDMI, and HDMI does not transmit power, so you will need to connect this pen display to power from the computer using this USB-C to USB-A connector. Now this needs to be connected to the computer because this will transmit power and data so that you can use the pen on the pen display. I prefer to use USB-C video connection because there is less cable clutter with just 1 cable. Let's take a closer look at the display. So this is an 11.6-inch display. The resolution is 1920 by 1080. So the aspect ratio is 16:9. The resolution is alright for an 11.6-inch display. Alright as in there is slight pixelation, but it's not too bad. The matte textured screen protector provides some tactile drawing experience, but the pen is still quite smooth on the display. And you can see some white haze here due to reflection, so that's the anti-glare and that's diffuse reflection. Ideally, you will not want to have any light source pointed directly at the display so that you can get the best visual quality. And the matte screen protector does affect image quality slightly. I'm not sure if you can see it, but there is light green and color noise added on top. Now this is not too bad because this is the smoother matte screen protector. The more textured screen protectors will have even more green and color noise. Visual quality of the display looks good enough. It looks bright enough for use in a bright room environment as long as there are no diffuse reflections on the display surface and the colors look vibrant enough. Now, 11.6 inch is what I would consider to be on the smaller side. Generally speaking, if you have the budget, I would recommend you get a pen display that is at least 13 inches or larger because the bigger the display, the larger the UI elements such as the text, the icons, the sliders, the buttons, they will all be bigger and easier to see. So 11.6 inch is not that big, and this is how big or small it is compared to A4 size paper. You can see this is the height versus A4, and this is the width versus A4. So this is slightly larger compared to A5 size, but smaller than A4. But it's not too small, as in when your palm is resting on the display while you're drawing, your palm will probably block off maybe 1/3 or 1/4 of the display. So there is still a good amount of canvas space left over to work with. And notice the viewing angle, it's not that great, as in there will be drop in brightness if you're viewing it off angle, but at least the colors don't shift because this is IPS LCD, so at least the colors, they don't shift too significantly when viewed from an angle. If you find the UI elements too small, you can actually increase the scaling to increase the size of the menu, the icons. Let me show you the difference between different scaling options. So this is 125% scaling, and I find the UI elements to be slightly smaller than what I would prefer. So I'm going to increase the scaling to 175%. So now the menu, text, the icons, and the palettes are bigger, but as you can see, because they are bigger, they take up more space, and the canvas space that you're left with now becomes smaller. So there is less space to work with for drawing. If you want to get more drawing space, you can of course hide the palettes, but that will affect productivity. And that's the reason why I recommend you get a larger pen display, because everything will look big and you will still get a larger canvas space to work with. Now Parblo does sell larger pen displays, but the larger ones are of course more expensive. And now let's see what you can do with the driver. There are Mac and Windows driver. So this is the Windows driver version 3.7.0.9 from 2nd of April 2024. So this is where you can customize the pen pressure and side buttons. The pressure curve can be adjusted by moving the 3 control points around. The features for the Mac and Windows driver are almost similar, except for the Windows driver, there is this additional Windows Ink feature which you may have to toggle on or off if pressure is not working as expected. Now for the side button customization, usually I have one button set to switch display, and unfortunately for this Windows driver and also for the Mac driver, switch display does not work. The switch display option provided is actually the keyboard shortcut Windows P for projection. The switch display feature that I want is to be able to press this button to move the cursor from one display to the other, so that I can control the cursor on the other display using the pen and switch the cursor back here when I need the cursor to be here. Now, without switch display, using dual display setup is very inconvenient. Let's say I'm using this pen display with a laptop and I'm drawing and I want to control the cursor on the laptop. So I would use my other hand to control the cursor, or hold the pen and control the cursor with the touchpad. Now I have to move from controlling the cursor here to controlling the cursor using the touchpad. It's not as convenient compared to having switch display where you can just control the cursor here with the pen and control the cursor on the laptop with the pen here. If you use a desktop, it's even more inconvenient. So let's say you have a mouse and you're drawing and you have to hold the pen and go use the mouse. And once you're done, you come back to drawing. So this switching around with touchpad or mouse, it's inconvenient. Under area settings is where you can map the working area of the pen display to the desktop of the pen display, or across multiple desktops if you are using multiple displays. And if there is cursor misalignment, this is where you can calibrate to remove cursor misalignment. And if you are left-handed, you can rotate the pen display 180 degrees here. Let's look at key settings. So this is where you can customize the 6 hotkeys and the dial. The dial can be configured with up to 3 sets of functions. When you input the keyboard shortcuts, you have to check this box, customizable express keys, otherwise your keyboard shortcut will not work. Unlike the drivers from other companies, there is no way to create specific groups of shortcuts that launch automatically depending on which drawing app is active. One big issue I have with the Windows driver, but not the Mac driver, is the driver would crash after a period of time while drawing, and to restart the driver, I have to disconnect the pen display, launch the driver again, and connect the pen display, and that obviously is quite inconvenient because it can happen several times a day. Alright, to conclude, the drawing performance of this pen display is decent. It's actually quite good, so I would say this pen display is good enough for beginners, but there are some downsides or limitations or potential deal breakers as mentioned at the start of the video. Now, Parblo definitely needs to improve their driver to fix some of those issues, because I have reviewed some of their pen displays before from a few years ago, and those issues have existed since a few years ago. For example, this driver still does not have switched display, and this is the only company that I know that has a pen display driver that does not have the switch display feature. So if Parblo can improve their drivers, both Windows and macOS drivers, and fix cursor misalignment, that would greatly improve user experience. Alright, I hope this review is useful, and if you guys have intention to buy this pen display, consider using the affiliate links that I have for you in the video description below. I get to earn some commission, but at no extra cost to you, and your support helps me put out reviews like this. Thanks for watching. See you guys in the next video. Bye.